This conference will now be recorded.
All right. People tell us what they've been doing. So, and just to be sure, Monica, you're taking minutes, right? Thank you. Okay, I'm not going to do that. So what has everybody been doing to advance the cause of human rights since we last met? I'm going to call on people. No, I'm not. You raise your hand if you have something to say. What have you all been doing? Amy, go ahead.
So I haven't shared it yet, but I do have a draft in the works for a letter from our committee to respond to kind of a form letter that we had talked about to respond to any letters that we have come in to us, correspondence. Been listening to a lot of books on tape about human rights, reading the newspaper, but I think the most important thing is that there's a draft pretty close to done, and it will be shared soon with everyone. And I also read with great interest, and I don't have it at my fingertips, but I can get it, a note that came out from the superintendent at E.O. Smith about the upcoming year and some of the plans for the year. And one of the things that struck me as curious is it said, and should anybody request this information in another language, it could be we could find it for them. And I thought, well, if it's not in another language already, I don't know how people would know to do that. So I've got a note to follow up to see how that might happen.
Very perceptive. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any activities that you want to report? Katie, go ahead.
So we have been working for a while to try to develop a juvenile justice diversion program that was very well supported by town council back in about February of 2020, and then this other thing happened that kind of changed our priorities. So we've been kind of picking that work back up, and I was able to meet with the my equivalents over at Willington and Ashford's Youth Services Bureau and start talking about how that could be a good relationship and how it might exist in a regional capacity. So they were going to be taking those conversations back to their heads of governance, and I was able to give Ryan an update, and he was excited to hear that. And he is going to be working on reaching out to our new sergeant resident state trooper to kind of help keep moving those things along. So we know that continues to be a process in progress, and we look forward to that tool for equity, just because we know that the juvenile justice system is not unbiased. So being able to create diversions from it are going to increase outcomes of equity for all of the youth that we can serve with it.
Thank you. I want to make sure I understand what that means. Juvenile justice diversion means alternate responses to juveniles who get in trouble?
Yes, and typically, like in the state of Connecticut, one of the largest models that gets used by a lot of youth service bureaus is called a juvenile review board. So instead of an arrested youth appearing in court and going through the adjudication process and probation and things like that, for first offenses and status offenses that don't necessarily rise to the level of needing to be in court, and typically those exclude violent offenses. Those typically do still tend to go through the court system, but they're able to, instead of going to court to try to prove innocence or accept guilt in sentencing, they say, yes, I admit that I did this thing that is against the law, it caused harm to the community, it's not going on a court record, I'm going to go and appear and meet with a board to talk about ways to repair the harm that I've done, to rebuild and reconnect into my community instead of connecting in juvenile justice.
Okay, thank you. Heather, what would you like to say?
I was just, Katie, is it sounds like it maybe has like a restorative justice type spin, you know, with taking accountability and that's exciting.
Yeah, that is definitely the model that CYSA, so the Connecticut Youth Services Association, our kind of parent organization because we're each kind of governed by our own municipalities, but the overall Association of Youth Service Bureaus has spent a lot of time helping do the up training for YSB staff and other juvenile review board members to learn about what is restorative justice instead of retributive justice.
That's right.
Helping those models take root more often in the state. There's still some that are not fully up into restorative justice yet, but they've been working really hard to train anyone and everyone who is open to the training.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Heather, your turn.
This doesn't necessarily apply to the work that we're doing in the committee, but I'm still pretty proud of it, so I'll share it. I got another manuscript accepted, so I think it should be published in November in a journal, and the article is called "The Impact of Discrimination in Pain Management: Strategies to Improve Pain Outcomes." So it's my work in healthcare, and so I'm pretty happy about that.
Congratulations. Phenomenal.
If there's a little blurb at the beginning of the article, say that you're a member of the Human Rights Commission in town of Mansfield when you give your biography. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, who else would like to speak? I just lost my screen. I have to find you again. Can anybody hear me?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Okay,
It looks like
I don't know
Olivia.
what's wrong with this, but I have not got a screen right now. There it is. Okay. Who else? Doing anything? Olivia, go ahead.
Mine's not as impressive as others. I was just going to say that I've been reading the book that you recommended at our last subcommittee meeting, Jane, the Children Room E4. It's really good. It's very interesting. It hits very close to home. Like everything I read, because it's about Connecticut public schools, is
Wow.
Even though it's a couple years old at this point, it is really fascinating, the research that's in there about segregation in Connecticut public schools. So I would pass on that recommendation to everyone in the commission. And then I wanted to say that today's my last meeting with you all before I leave for college, and that I really appreciated this opportunity and getting to know all of you and learning what town government is like and working on these issues. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what the commission does in the next few years, especially as hopefully COVID, eases up a little and we can get out in the community, or you guys can. I won't be there anymore, but I'll be cheering you all on.
Olivia, thank you very much for everything you have contributed, because it's been substantial. And
I do hope you keep us updated on your
your
success.
process.
Yes, definitely. Come back to meetings too if you want in the summer. Come say hi.
Maybe I'll make some public comment. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. You have to come back. Oh, that's right. With any luck, we will be in person. But if we're not, you can come anytime.
Yeah.
Okay, other people. Derek, why don't you tell everybody Derek, you tell what you did.
Well, to be honest, I've done very little in that regard, not including the project on affordable housing that I've been collaborating with Jane on. But if you want to include that, I will state that in the way of that project, thus far, Jane and I have actually both attempted to contact a pair of state legislators. As far as I'm aware, neither have provided any response. But also, we have both collaborated to create this sort of report of sorts, I suppose you can say, about our affordable housing plans and prospects in the town of Mansfield, and also as it relates to a potential purchase of new real estate by UConn, which more specifically we're attempting to prevent.
Right, and it's too late to prevent it, but it might not be too late to overturn it. So we'll see. I want to say to everybody, Derek did a wonderful job going through the qualitative data that we have from the survey responses. And I wrote an intro and a conclusion because he did all the hard part. And the big point that we're making, in addition to all the data that he found about where affordable housing needs to go, why we need to have affordable housing, Mansfield is currently out of compliance with the percentage of affordable housing available. What this Yukon land purchase has done to interfere with our ability to come up to the level of state expectations. We also found something new, and that was that we think there's a civil rights violation involved here, because the majority of people who need affordable housing are disadvantaged in one way or another. The largest number of people who would benefit from this kind of housing availability are the people who are in the low-paying jobs at Yukon, who are overwhelmingly people of color. And once I realized that, I thought, oh, this is much more serious than I can't find an apartment. So we've written this little thing together, and I sent it to Derek to respond and edit, and he hasn't had time to get back. But when I brought that up in our previous subcommittee meeting, the town publicity lady, whose name I always forget, said the civil rights thing is incredibly important. Make sure you bring it up again and again and again, because the book I recommended was The Color of Law, which is the history of the federal government in creating discrimination all over the country, and most largely in housing. And what we have here now is a de facto segregation move. By preventing the construction of this kind of housing, we are de facto continuing to segregate the town of Mansfield, which is unconstitutional and illegal. So that will be in our report to whoever we report it to, because I think that's more serious than I just can't find an apartment on a bus line. So we will be pursuing this one. And I want to say again, I thought Derek did a fantastic job. I read it and I said, oh, well, yeah, he did it. Done. So anyway, I will get this to Glenn, and then he can figure out who he wants to send it to. And it's a draft, but it's in motion. I did one other thing, was I attempted to find out about the survey that was done in the E.O. Smith that resulted in the termination of the resource SROs. And I asked the superintendent, would she please, was that publicly available? And I got an answer from Lou, the principal, and he didn't answer me. He just said, yeah, we did a survey. He didn't even say, no, you can't have it. He just said, we did a survey and we terminated SROs. Thank you very much. I'll be right there. And so what I got from him was worse than nothing, and I was not happy, but I wrote to Glenn and said, so what should we do about this? So that's in that status. Amy, go ahead.
So Jane, to follow up, and excuse, I'm sorry if I looked like I was being patient. I certainly wasn't. I have also inquired of Lou how the survey is coming along that they plan on giving to students and families, and I got a very similar response. I got a very very terse answer, and it was an email. Glenn is CC'd on it, and it says, we are still working with Yukon. I have nothing more to report. So I was curious about, what has come of that. Also, that you mentioned the SROs and this survey that had happened or did not happen, who knows. There was something about a new security system thing that will be in place this upcoming year at EO in the letter from Sharon. So not sure what that looks like as of yet, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, I think the clear message is, would you please leave us alone? So, and the clear answer is probably not. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm trying to learn how to be diplomatic. It's an acquired skill late in life. Other people, is anybody doing anything? Yeah, Heather, what else?
I just have a question. Does anybody know what happened? About 3 weeks ago, an email came out from E.O. Smith about a racial incident, a racial discrimination incident, something about social media. And they said that they were looking into something. No?
The only thing I know is that such an event occurred.
Okay.
That's all I know. Okay, other member reports. Katie, go ahead.
I had one more thing that I remembered. And then the SRO thing made me think of just another thing right now. I haven't heard if EO has filled the new position they created this year of the community resource outreach person. But I know that had been something that sounded like they were substituting for the SRO program to kind of be more support based rather than kind of the idea of security and enforcement. So I'll be excited to hopefully connect with that person and hopefully have them participate with us on the diversion project that we're in. And then my other update that I just remembered because it only happened today is we were able to meet with Principal Mural and Assistant Principal Barlow over at Mansfield Middle School. And it looks like we're going to be good to go for the coming school year for our middle school groups to happen at the middle school. So regardless of kind of the open status of town hall versus not, we'll be able to run a wide variety of programs, including our Mansfield Youth Pride group that is going to start happening at the middle school rather than in our offices, which we're hoping is going to make it potentially more accessible for kids because they'll be able to come to group and then take late buses home instead of having to rely on parent transportation. So we're looking forward to seeing how kind of holding groups at the school itself might impact, you know, who we get to come and join us, and we'll kind of keep planning and frankly scheming, because that's what we do, we scheme, but we're excited to be in the process of coordinating those groups to be ready to be back in real life this fall.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Okay, this is the last moment for member contributions. Anybody else? Okay, moving right along, all business. We were supposed to review the equity statement, but Monica says there's a revised version, so I'm going to take the liberty of postponing that to the next meeting since I haven't read it yet, and now we have a new one, and we'll put that on the agenda for September, please.
One second, let me just double check. Amy, is there a revised version?
You told me there was.
No,
don't know if there
no, the only one that we have is the one that Derek, Felicia, and I have worked on, and I know Derek had made a couple other suggestions, and
So there is supposed to be one.
pardon me?
There will be one.
Oh, right.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't receive anything, so I thought that it hadn't come through yet.
I think honestly, to Monica, we were waiting for more feedback from people before we created more revisions. So, but I think if, you know, I think that it would be useful if people had time to look at it and make notes. I think we're at a good place for that. And I know that Derek did add some things, but I think at this point it will be good to have other eyes.
Okay, everybody do your, August is family chaos and vacation month. And I certainly have been in this and haven't done much. So if that's where you've been, we'll try to get back on task in September. Next item on the agenda, survey updates and rollout of information. Now, who has any information about that? Heather, go ahead. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. So we talked about this in our subcommittee meeting. Derek has done a wonderful job looking at some of the qualitative information, and we're going to continue to work on that. We were looking at how we can evaluate the results of the survey, because, you know, we want to be able to look at the, you know, different components to see, you know, differences. But I also recognize that, you know, it's going to be difficult because as we pull everything out, like, let's say we look at all of the females who, and you know, the responses, you know, for females, to say, you know, were more females reporting human rights issues than males or whatever. We may find that, but we won't be able to know, was it the fact that they were female, or was it some other fact, like maybe most of the females also were racially minoritized, or maybe most of the females were, other components. So by just pulling out the sections and looking at the results, we may be really missing some of the key indicators. So I went on my own private search to find a statistician who would volunteer their time so that we could do like a regression analysis and look at the components together. And I was able to find somebody. She's local. She's actually a doctoral student in statistics. Really lovely. And she was excited about the opportunity to work on this. Seems like it's an important, human rights was important to her as well. So she's going to volunteer her time. I know she was working with Glenn. Glenn had a conversation with her, and we were thinking about maybe having Amy speak with her too, although that would be a surprise to Amy. We haven't told you that yet. But she is, it's a busy time. So I don't know how much she's done yet. And because Glenn isn't here, I'm not sure. But I'm pretty excited that she's willing to do this for us, because I think it will help us not miss potential areas of concern or overestimate concern where it really shouldn't be. I have an understanding of statistics as a researcher and, can read and understand them, but I certainly cannot calculate them or, run meaningful statistics in a way that, somebody else could. So I know that she's working on it. Monica, I know you got back to me, and I missed your call again. So it would be helpful to get some the data in a different format for her, and I'll talk to you about that. And she said if we can't get it to her in a different format, that's fine. It would just take her a little bit longer because she's going to literally have to recode everything. Which is hard, well, time consuming. But so that's where we are. And I don't know the status of where she is or what her and Glenn have talked about. Her name is Pamela. And like I said, she is local and she's got kids in the Mansfield schools.
That's great.
If,
Thank you, Heather. I think Glenn is an expert in this, and he doesn't, I'm sure, have the time to do it, but he certainly has the expertise to tell her what questions to ask, and that's the critical element here. So
the other thing,
very good.
She said she would love to come to one of our meetings to then present, or to answer questions, so that, if we feel like we need to run some different analysis, she can talk us through that or tell us why we don't need to do that or we should do something else or whatever. So.
It gets very complicated even with this little bit of information, but it's wonderful you found somebody. Katie.
I was putting on my very old, very dusty stats hat. It doesn't fit anymore, but it's been a long time since dissertation land. But looking at potentially an ANCOVA being a valuable tool for her to run to kind of see where things are in those variances.
Yeah, that's important. But the thing we have to remember is it's a small sample size, and we're not calling this research. We're calling it an assessment of current perceptions and conditions, so that nobody can tell us we were statistically invalid. We're just trying to get a picture of what's going on, and don't let anybody talk you out of that. So this is really good. I'm delighted that you got that far. Look forward to the results. Has anybody got anything else to say on this subject? Okay, moving right along. Does anybody know anything about the Martin Luther King Mural Project, or do we have to wait for Glenn? Barbara, have you had anything to do with this project?
Wait, before we go on, I think Derek had his hand up. I just don't want to miss him.
Sorry. Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I did. But what I wanted to add in the survey is I actually did get at least one version of the coding the qualitative data done. I actually shared that with the other members of the town charge subcommittee, at least of those that were at the last meeting where we discussed this matter. Thus far, I have not heard back from any of them. But with regard to the responses themselves, I think the main difficulty I faced from that task was the fact that some of the responses could fit in multiple different categories in terms of the things that they might be referring to or the concerns that they may be referring to, and some were just too vague to even categorize at all. So what I just did actually is just simply excluded them. But I'm not 100% positive that might have been the best idea, given the fact that might ignore some other concerns. Like some people, I think, just mentioned like very vague, I think some people mentioned like some equity concerns that they've had, but then have not added any further detail about which equity concerns that they have. So yeah, those responses I simply did not categorize at all. But also in terms of in terms of the responses, in terms of perhaps the people who submitted these responses themselves, I think it might be useful to do some type of crosstabs on these as well, given the fact that the demographic data that may skew the quantitative responses may also skew the qualitative ones as well. We just want to ensure that we actually ensure that we have an accurate cross-examination of every segment of the population here. And I think we already have seen that some of the demographic data from those who submitted responses to the survey doesn't quite match that of the community. So, yeah, I think that is something that we do want to address.
Yeah, I think there's going to have to be some kind of follow-up. I don't know whether it'll be focus groups or another short survey or what. The thing I'm the most aware of is that this went to the residents of the town of Mansfield, and there are a lot of people from Ashford and Wellington and Smith, and we didn't ask those families anything, and they access our services as well. So I think we need to get that and they are likely to be among those who don't feel well treated. So I think we need to do that, but that's a follow-up. I mean, this is an ongoing process, and we're just going to keep it up until we feel like we have a good handle on it. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Who knows about the Martin Luther King Project? Anybody? No hands up? Okay. Discussion postponed to the next meeting. The next meeting is an issue under item 6, new business. Calendar of important holidays. Somebody was going to put that together. Who was going to do that? Or what is the status of that?
I don't know.
I think it got given to the communications and outreach subcommittee. I don't know if Margaret was supposed to work on that with someone, and since she's not here today, I don't know if that might need to be tabled as well.
Okay, that will be tabled. Moving along, we did change the meeting date for September to avoid conflict with either Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. I don't remember which one. Monica, what's the new meeting date? Did we pick one, or
we did not pick one yet? We were hoping to pick one today.
Okay, tell us what days we can't do it.
Hold on here. We cannot do it the 15th or the 16th or the 7th or 8th.
Okay, somebody get out a calendar for September. I can do that.
Are we always sticking with Wednesdays, or is another day possible?
That's the big question.
So as long as we decide to meet remotely, we can pretty much do any day that's not a Friday or Saturday or Sunday. So Yeah, as long as we plan to meet remotely, that is fine. If we do not, then we're gonna have some conflicts in town, council chamber.
And Monica, it sounds like it's up to us then to make that decision.
Glenn was the one who decided that tonight was going to be remote.
Okay.
I would assume that it is between, if Jane's running the meeting, then it's Jane. If it's Glenn running the meeting,
Right.
then it's Glenn.
Okay.
The
Well,
only
Glenn-
difference,
Glenn.
I attended the town hall meeting virtually. Was it yesterday or the day before? I don't remember. I'm pretty sure they decided that the meetings are going to be virtual
okay.
now.
Was that all meetings or just their meetings?
That's a good question. I assume since they were the town council that it was all town meetings, but maybe that was an assumption that is not correct.
Yeah, usually the town meetings will come from the manager if it's our committees, our committees and subcommittees. But I don't know unless Katie heard something else.
What I have heard from my department head is that all meetings are being encouraged to be remote. I don't know if they are being mandated to be remote, but that the department head's understanding of what is being suggested or requested is that remote is better.
And just FYI, Mansfield has the lowest vaccination rate of any town in the state, which is horrifying, and nobody's exactly sure why. Some of it is UConn students, but not all of it.
No, Jane, that's wrong. Our actual vaccination rate is over 85%, I think.
Well, where did that 30% come from that they're putting in the newspaper?
Well, because I can explain it if you want.
Please do.
Evidently, the students at UConn were counted as our population, but they all left in April, and if any of them got vaccinated, that information is for their hometown. Okay, so the people in Mansfield, about 8,600 people have been vaccinated, and they think that they're saying our population's about 10,000. So
okay, thank you.
I got that information from Ben Shaken.
That's great. Okay, so I withdraw my objection. So we don't know if we're going to be. What would we prefer to do? Would you prefer to have a face-to-face meeting or a remote meeting, assuming that nothing changes between now and then, which is not a correct assumption? You want remote? Katie wants remote. Heather everybody wants remote. Okay, Dave?
I have an unvaccinated child, so I'm all for remote.
Yeah, nothing else. You don't have to say anything else. Okay. So the 7th and 8th, 14th, 15th and 16th are out, and that leaves us with the 9th, which is a Thursday, and the 13th, which is a Monday, or we can go to the following week.
I'm unable to be here on the 13th, but the 9th is okay with me.
Okay. Anybody else?
The 9th would work for me as well. I could do the 13th. I teach at UConn in the evenings, but I know our meetings they won't conflict. They'll be tight, but they won't conflict.
Okay. Can everybody here come on the 9th? Will that work for everybody? Yes, yes. Okay. Heather, Monica, we have decided the next meeting is going to be on September 9th at 7 o'clock, and it's going to be remote. Okay. And the world may totally change between now and then, who knows? That's what we're going to do. Okay, moving right along. Communications, it says none. There are no communications. What does that mean? Nobody wrote to us, nobody talked to us. That's what it means. Okay, so much for that. Report of subcommittees, town charge. What have you got to say? Who's going to give the town charge subcommittee report?
I can. So as you heard, we were working on the survey, looking at those results. Again, Derek has done a tremendous amount of work looking at the qualitative results. I did send an interesting, I just sent it, but I sent an interesting email to Monica. It's very non-scientific, but I pulled all of the qualitative results from the survey and put them into a word cloud. It's just kind of neat. I like word clouds. So there's a little graphic of all the qualitative information. We are, as you also heard, Amy is drafting a letter to respond to people who write in or, you know, submit concerns or comments. We all agree that it's really important for us to do that because we want people to know that we are hearing them and that we're available. But we also acknowledge that we want people to also understand that our charge is not to like adjudicate or like to decide if there is a human rights violation or whatever. That's above and beyond our charge. But we do want people to understand that we are paying attention and that they can bring concerns to us. So along with that letter would be additional resources for them. And I think that's, did I miss anything? Amy, Derek, who else? Barbara, I think Barbara, no, Barbara wasn't there.
No, I don't think so, Heather. I know that you, and two, I have a confession to make. You and I had talked about going to the for the hospital, and then sadly I was unable to make it. Something came up that was pretty urgent, and so I wasn't able to get there. I don't know if you were able to get there for the hospital closing.
I had planned, but I actually wasn't able to get there either. But she's talking about there was a protest demonstration, public awareness event in Willimantic supporting the or encouraging the return of maternity services to Wyndham Hospital, which we have supported, and they're going to continue. That was through the hosting agency was the NAACP, and so they're continuing to work on this project. So you know we can continue to notify people in the commission of future events, and hopefully we can help them, you know, with this initiative.
Yeah, I think the NAACP is taking the lead on that, and that's great. I mean, everybody doesn't have to do everything. We can just support what they're doing. So let us continue to do that. Okay, communications and outreach. One thing we did is that Derek and I wrote our report on affordable housing, and I read that book called The Color of Law, which really familiarized me with the history of housing discrimination in the United States as sponsored by governments, not by accident. And so we've done that, and I will submit that to Glenn for distribution or discussion or whatever he wants to do with it. Has anybody else from the Communications and Outreach Committee done anything? I did talk to Lou and Sharon for just Region 19. Oh, and I did manage to get a hold of Greg Haddad. Derek, the legislature is in session now, which really surprised me. I talked to Susan Johnson this morning, and she said, "What are you talking to me for? I'm in a budget meeting." I thought, why'd you answer the phone? But anyway, she referred me back to Greg Haddad, but I had a conversation with a man who has just moved back to town, who has a doctorate in public policy and higher education. And he said to me, and he is in a position to know, he said there's a lot of distress in the state legislature about UConn overreach, intruding on town autonomy. And he said the one thing you must not do is let this story die. So Greg Haddad wrote a very nice letter to everybody in town tonight and said what he was doing to keep this conversation going. And I think we all need to do that in whatever form we can think of, because this is an abuse of power, and it pushes us into a position of not living up to our responsibilities under the affordable housing mandates of the state. So that was the other thing I did. I went out of my way to find out a little bit more about that. Anybody else? Opportunity for public comment. There are no members of the public here. Opportunity for internal comment that you forgot to say before. Anybody got anything else you want to say? You know, I am so impressed with the fact that we are all working individually and occasionally together, but we are kind of starting to shake the tree. And I am delighted with that. And even if it's not an official formal thing yet, it's starting to happen. And I read that by the unwillingness of people to speak to me anymore about these subjects. And I actually had one person who was enthusiastically wanting to talk to me, who's on the school board of Smith, and 2 weeks later she acted like she never met me before. And I thought, that doesn't really happen unless somebody tells you don't talk to Jane. So I think people are beginning to notice that we're pushing on them, and I think that's a good thing. Go ahead, Kate.
I just had one other thought that we hadn't kind of brought up before, but kind of in the vein of introducing ourselves more and more to the public and the recognition of what work we are doing. I know right now they are in the process of planning Celebrate Mansfield that is scheduled to take place on October 2nd. So I don't know if it's something that we've already started to think about and discuss as a group, having a presence there in any of the subcommittees, but looking at if that's an area of interest to further kind of, if it does happen, have someone there.
Oh, good question. Yes, not only have we looked at it, we have a table reserved for us already. We just now
good.
need to get the sign we need and some papers to give people and stuff like that. But yeah, that's in process. And Glenn made the request that it's only a 2-hour event, I believe, but anybody who can go there, talk to people, welcome people. And Barbara keeps saying they just need to be able to talk to us. We need to get people face to face. So if we have the opportunity and you can clear a couple hours on your calendar, that's a really good thing. We all should try to do. Thank you.
I can definitely be there for that.
Yeah, I'm going to be there too. Anybody else? Livia, good luck. Go out there and make it better. We are so proud of you. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And the meeting is officially adjourned at 7:45.
Thank you, everyone. Good
Good
night.
night, everybody.